All right, welcome back to Lost for Words with Lori. It is the 5th of January. It is my first podcast of the year of 2023. So I hope everyone had a great Happy New Year. Boy, I'll tell you, time flies when you're having fun, right? I cannot believe that it is already into January, and the holiday season is finally over. You talk about chaos and crazy, right? So again, I hope everyone had a happy new year. And if you're of the like-mindedness to create resolutions or new things or new goals for the new year, which is basically a to-do list of things that you probably should have done a long time ago and needed that transitional new year as a motivator, I guess, to make good choices and start making some good plans for the upcoming year and for your future, I guess. I've been doing my podcast now for well over a year. It's been a year and a few months since Toby had passed. And I started my new year off kind of going through my list of content and what I've put out so far, and just recognizing that a lot of the subjects and the things that I've tackled are very relevant, and they're still irrelevant, especially as they relate to toxic cesspool world and the social interwebs and all of the struggles that people seem to have navigating them. And even just amongst talking with the people that I'm close to on social media and in my first world, covering subjects and recognizing, the huge difficulties that people are having with the same kind of issues that, I have encountered. Life coaching people who are going through problems and their things that I have some experience with, which has brought me to, the recurring theme of narcissism and sociopathic behavior on the internet, because there's no consequences in the virtual world, and there are so many people out there who are able to prey and be predators of vulnerable people and take advantage of those less fortunate. But there's also people who are smart, who are wise, who have worked really hard to get where they are, who still fall victim sometimes to the more subtle, covert narcissists that are out there, who will, suck you in, drag you in, or try to create havoc in your life because of their own shortcomings. Today I kind of wanted to start the new year with talking about the red flags of people that people can look at and try to recognize in some of these toxic behaviors with people, not only in their social media and toxic cesspool world, but also in their first world, and kind of break those down a little bit, because there are so many of them, and there are so many people who are struggling and fighting with that. And one of the things that I truly believe, and this is kind of a fact, is that narcissists are bred, not born, where sociopaths and psychopaths are born and not bred. But I truly believe that most people who have some sort of narcissism or narcissistic personality disorders of some sort, again, I'm not a professional, I don't diagnose those things, but when the red flags are there, they're there. But I think that most people that fall into that category are really just, they're bred out of trauma, and they're bred out of past trauma, have been people who have been traumatized very proliferately in their lives, and they come from damaged and broken pasts, and those people never find any kind of healing or look into that, or either that or they're handed everything on a silver platter, and then there's no consequences, and so therefore they have a exalted sense of self, and their ego is just off the chains. But I honestly believe that most people who are narcissistic are really just running away from, or hiding, or using some kind of defense mechanism from their trauma. And until those traumas and those things are addressed and they look at them, they're going to continue to cycle and spiral downward in this cycle of self-destruction. And it's unfortunate that so many people become collateral damage to that, because they either aren't used to that, they've never experienced it, or they're easy targets because they're vulnerable or they're empathic, and narcissists love that. They target that. Or, they just haven't experienced it enough to recognize the red flags that are there. So when we talk about red flags, we talk about behavior that makes you go, stop in your tracks, like, what the fuck, or what's going on, or what the hell. And there are mountains of information. Tons of websites, tons of TikToks, tons of content out there on the social medias that identify and cover the behaviors that people who are on that spectrum of narcissism exhibit. And we've talked about them here. I've talked about them on numerous podcasts in the last year. And so what are some of those red flags? And I want to cover some of those so that people can be understanding and be aware of how this relates to what I've been observing here on the internet for well over a year and a half, almost 2 years now. It'll be in April, since I came to the platform that I'm on and recognized some of these things over time. And maybe they'll help and maybe they won't. And then we can break down some of the boundaries that you can establish to eliminate some of that toxicity in your world. So without further ado, let's talk about recognizing some of those red flags. Let's start with blaming. So one of the things that I've recognized with people who are have a tendency, to be on that narcissism path is that they blame everybody for anything, to avoid accountability for anything that they do that makes people upset. So, for instance, if somebody says something out of line and they hurt your feelings, they will basically turn it around and blame you for the problem. Well, if you didn't make me feel that way, or if you didn't do this. And they have a tendency to blame everyone for their problems. No accountability, no acceptance that maybe if they had made better choices or did something different, that the problem wouldn't exist. So, if you're consistently finding somebody who has a scapegoat or a blaming person or event for everything that goes wrong in their world, it's definitely a red flag. Another one is that most narcissists are always right. They're never wrong. They're always right. And even if they're not right and you have logic, any kind of proof to back up the fact that they're incorrect, they will die on that mountain. They cannot be wrong. They cannot be incorrect. And if you call them out on that, that creates a huge, can of worms. A lot of narcissistic people are very arrogant and overconfident. They have an ego where their mouth writes a lot of checks that their ass cannot cash. Very much better, think that they're better, or that everything they do is better than everyone else. One of the things that I've noticed is that they will dismiss any of your accomplishments to interject their own. So if I was to say, hey, I just got a raise at work, it would be, oh, well, that's great, but, I work X amount of hours more than you do and I make more money. Anything that you have to be proud of will be overshadowed by their accomplishment. And to me, that's a complete red flag. If people cannot be happy for your accomplishments without interjecting themselves into that for some reason, that's kind of a red flag for me too, especially when they will try to take credit for what you have done. And that happens on social media and platforms all the time. Somebody will make a milestone goal and narcissistic people will try to take credit for that. Well, if I didn't shout you out, if I didn't share your stuff, or if I wasn't one of your biggest supporters, you wouldn't be where you are without me. And so therefore they try to take credit for your accomplishments, and not give you any credit whatsoever. Another thing that they'll do is say things like, oh, I'm gifted, or I'm perfect, or I don't make any mistakes. And that in itself is a red flag. We're all human. We all make mistakes. One of the things that I've noticed is that victim mentality. Like, victim, victim, victim. They're always a victim. Somebody did this to them. If it weren't for this, then that. You know, if they are called out on their behavior, they will turn around and victimize the victim in the actual deal, and make it how they're the ones who are being treated poorly. They're the ones who are being bullied. They're the ones, when in all reality, they're the ones who are doing the bullying in the first place. And if you've got that gut feeling that something's not right, and the way that I feel about victimizing is nobody can be that unlucky that everything bad always happens to them and only them. At some point, you have to recognize that your behavior, your circumstances are created by you. And nobody is that unlucky that everything bad always happens to them. And if somebody claims that they are, it's time for them to take a look at their behavior. It's a huge red flag, especially when there are patterns of behaviors over time. Like I said, I've been on this platform for almost 2 years, and you can recognize patterns in people that make you go, why does this person always have conflicts with other people on the internet? Why are they always fighting with somebody? Why are they always having conflicts, and people are talking shit about them, and they're turning around and saying, oh no, I'm just getting a bad rap, or I'm being victimized, when in reality they're probably creating it themselves. I think that those people who have that grandiose sense of self is the hugest red flag, because they're always hyping up their accomplishments, and they have unrealistic expectations that people are going to think that they're great, especially when they're pathologically lying about the things that they've accomplished, or if they look at certain things that are negative as being an accomplishment. For instance, people who have continuous drama and fighting with different communities on the internet, and they get ousted because of their behavior, and they look at that as being some kind of a good thing, like they're the hero. Oh, I went in and did this, and I've been kicked out of all these places, but it's because I'm doing the good thing, and I'm trying to call out bad behavior, when in reality, they're the ones who are participating, they're the ones who are creating the bad behavior in the first place. Another red flag is if people are disrespecting your boundaries repeatedly. And I talk a lot about boundaries and establishing things that you teach people how to treat you. And you basically give them the layout of what kind of behavior you do not accept. And if people are continuously pushing on those boundaries, that to me is the big red flag. I've made no bones about anything when it comes to my friendships, my relationships, what is acceptable and not acceptable in my world. And if people keep on stepping on those things and keep on pushing those boundaries and telling, basically doing the things that I've already told somebody make me uncomfortable, that to me is a huge red flag. And then using an excuse like I forgot, or whatever. I'm sorry, but if people keep pushing on those things and you give them 1, 2, 3 chances, eventually their behavior isn't going to change. And then you can basically say, listen, I'm not accepting this behavior anymore. Another red flag is they use people for their own gain. They chase clout. They basically are bootlickers. They're bottom feeders. They have to either create conflict with somebody who is higher on the level than they are, to get attention or notoriety, or they try to associate themselves, even if they don't know who they are. They name drop, they talk about content creators that are bigger along the ladder or are more successful than they are, to try to insert themselves into that community or into that world. And for what? To gain some kind of attention, which is what narcissists crave, need, and want. The biggest red flag as of late has been all of the scorekeeping that goes on. And scorekeeping is not something that it's a hard one to define, because there's a certain amount of scorekeeping that most people understand is going to happen anyway. The one that's toxic is the one, well, I did this for you, therefore you have to or must comply with what I did or what I say. And that becomes problematic in the social medias, because if anybody assists you in any way, whether they support you, they shout you out, they share your content, they help you grow, whatever, with the intent to turn around and try to use that as leverage for something, or to make you do something, or make you feel bad for something that they've done in the past, and they weaponize that. And go, well, I did all this for you, so now you have to follow along. And that's problematic in my world. I don't keep score. You do something nice for me, you do it with the intent that you aren't going to receive anything in return. And if you don't, then you're basically a pile of garbage. I don't do anything for anybody with the expectation that I'm going to get anything in return. And if that's the case, it should be laid out on the table right away. And my example of that would be as if you're collaborating with somebody on any venture, on any platform. I've been a guest on multiple people's shows, their live streams, their podcasts, where it's been basically spoken that, in return for that, I'll drop your link, or it'll be linked in the description, or we'll talk about it. But it's all been laid out very transparently from the beginning. And you don't wait 6 months and then go, oh, well, because I did this for you, now you have to do this for me, especially if it's something that makes somebody else uncomfortable. A lot of the scorekeeping that goes on in toxic cesspool world is, well, I'm your friend, I did all this for you, so you can't talk to, be friends with, visit, support, or help another channel, especially when they have a conflict with them. And I don't tolerate that kind of gatekeeping and scorekeeping. I'm allowed to be friends with whomever I want, talk to whoever I want, go to whoever's channel I want. And there are people who will troll, watch, stalk other people that they're having conflict with, in order to make sure that they're either A, not saying anything bad about them, because, the whole world revolves around the narcissist, or that they can come back and go, oh, well, I saw you on so-and-so's platform and they're bad people, and then I can't trust you, or you're not my friend. Well, that's a you problem, to be fair. And that kind of scorekeeping causes more problems in competition on the internet than most things. And then the tantrums. Oh my God, I have seen more people on social media, and this is a huge red flag, is these people who insist that they need to do hate streams, they need to retaliate, they need to give out information and throw a tantrum because they didn't get their way, or things didn't go their way, or they're upset. And it literally reads like a 3-year-old tantrum. Didn't get their toy, their ice cream, whatever it is. And if you sit back and watch it, it's laughable. And it's sad to see grown adults act like little children when they don't get their way. But it happens all over the social medias. And then there's no sincere apology or any accountability afterwards. It's pouting and crying and whining, in some cases real tears that are fake, and they never apologize sincerely. It's, I'm sorry, but, or I'm sorry, but I had a bad day. I'm sorry, but this circumstance made me do it. If people are saying but or however after every time that they're trying to make amends for an apology that's repeated, I might add, red flag, repeated behavior, and they have to continually try to apologize, that's not sincere. And it's disingenuous, and it's bullshit. And until people change their behavior, words mean nothing. And there are never a sincere apology on the internet, because you don't have to be accountable. You can say, oh, I'm sorry, and then turn around and do the same fucking thing the next day. And people will eat that shit up. And the other red flag would be, there's always a crisis in these people's worlds. They never have a moment of happiness. They never have calm moments. There's always a crisis. Something is always either A, happening to them, or B, they're upset, or they've created it for themselves. And if you're around people who are constantly spinning their wheels in crisis and they make your head hurt, and that's a red flag right there. I mean, why do you hate calm? Why do you hate peace? Why is there always something is urgent and there's a crisis? And that to me is huge as far as avoiding that, because it's exhausting to have to exert energy into putting out other people's fires all the time because they never have anything good. And when they do, it's constant bragging about what they've done and their success. Another red flag that happens is that their wide emotional spectrums and their manic consistently is exhausting. You know, being really happy about something one minute and then being down and angry the next, and just in that constant cycle of crisis, good or bad. And that is a huge red flag. A lot of that love bombing term that people use, being you're being praised. Oh, I love you. Oh, you're the best. Oh, you're awesome. Oh, I care about you. And then you get sucked into feeling like you're part of that. And then they're allowed to turn around and use negative tactics to try to gaslight you into being their punching bag and their doormat. And then when you call them out on it, then they go, oh, you know, they make an excuse for why they did the behavior. And then they try to turn around and say, oh, but you're still so awesome, and thank you for forgiving me, and blah, blah, blah. If anybody's constantly building you up, and kissing your ass, and you feel like they're blowing smoke up your ass, that's a red flag too. What are they projecting? Are they fishing for a compliment that you give them back that praise? Or are they just setting you up for some kind of manipulation in the future? If somebody is trying to isolate you from the people around you and get you to stop talking to people, stop hanging out with people, stop associating with people, especially family, especially your friends that you've known for a long time or people you know in real life, people who try to isolate others have problems, and that is a real red flag for me. If anybody tells me or tries to point out bad behavior about people that I'm closest to in an attempt to try to get my opinion to change about them, that says a lot about what they're trying to hide from, or they're trying to cut you off from the support system and the people who will give you good wisdom, who will give you good advice, and hopefully encourage you to make better choices. But if they're pushing you at people who are manipulative, abusive, narcissistic, that's another red flag there, especially when it's them doing the behavior. The triangulation issue is a huge red flag, that they always need to bring another person into the situation or a mob of people to validate their rightness. If you cannot stand on your own feet about a statement or a thing or whatever it is that you're doing, and you can stand by yourself, whether it's right or wrong, and back yourself up without needing validation from people around you, from the big mob, from the flying monkeys who are going to go attack. If you can't hold your own values, your own truths on your own, that's a huge red flag. I don't need anybody to say I'm right. I don't need anybody to say I'm wrong. But if I make a mistake, I can be accountable for that and say, you know what, how can I fix that? How can I make it better so we don't do it next time? But if I fuck up, I don't need to run to 30 other people and ask their opinion about it in order to create drama or dissension. And I don't need to triangulate. I don't need to add people into the mix. I don't need an echo chamber to believe in what I say. As long as I can validate my own stuff from within with me, then I'm good. The hugest red flag on the internet is the competition. And that is that need that people need to consistently dog other people or make themselves better or cause problems with people because they are competing with them in the same platform or community. And this becomes huge. It becomes the biggest problem because they look at other people as a threat, or they constantly are feeling invalidated by other people's success because they feel their own failure is a problem. And like I said, when I started this journey and recognized narcissistic tendencies in a lot of people, that was the hugest red flag. It was, people saying, oh, I don't care about the numbers, or I don't care about this, that, or the other thing, but yet they are cutthroat in the way that they deal with people. They are cutthroat in their behavior with people, and they're constantly competing with other people, or shutting down other people or criticizing other people. And that brings us to the criticism part. Accepting criticism and constructive criticism is never easy for anybody. We're all our own worst enemy. I think I'm more self-critical about myself than anybody has ever been about me or what I do. However, being able to accept constructive criticism tells a lot about how mature somebody is. Being able to take ideas from other people and utilize them in a way that's positive. And not take credit for it, but to be humble in that. And some of the people who cannot accept constructive criticism are really quick to sit and point out other people's failures, because it's a really easy way to not look at their own problems, to look at their own growth opportunities, as we call them. And those are some examples of the red flags that I have seen, that I've experienced, and one of the reasons that some of the relationships that I've been invested in over the last 2 years have failed, is because I'm willing to recognize that there are issues at hand, and a narcissist or a sociopath refuses to look at themselves, to make changes that make them better, and to recognize that they're human and they've got shortcomings. It's always somebody else's fault. They're the victim. Boo-hoo. Spin your wheels, create drama, project onto other people, to take the spotlight off of them for any wrongdoing they may have done and make it somebody else's problem. And we see this a lot in the drama stuff that goes on the internet, where people will make a mistake and then they'll do a public apology, and then it's still somebody else's fault. Oh, well, we were fed the wrong information, or I overreacted, but there's still no accountability. And then the behavior pattern continues, and it keeps happening over and over and over. At what point do you stop jumping the gun, reacting on a knee-jerk information that you hear, and become a flying monkey to go defend so-and-so and everybody else based on poor information, and then not cry about it and be a victim? You fucked up. If you fuck up, own it and stop doing it. But a lot of these people continue the cycle. They fuck up and then they do it again, and they apologize, and then they cry, and then it's boo-hoo, and then the flying monkeys come out and everybody's on so-and-so's side, and then 2 months later they're all friends again, and then the cycle starts all over again. Because so-and-so's doing better than they are, or they, became friends with somebody they don't like. Again, it's a toxic cesspool of garbage and self-destruction, and nobody's having fun. Nobody's creating content. Nobody is doing anything positive or good, not only for their community, but for themselves. And people seem to be pretty content to sit around in that misery and create drama and problems for other people. One of the things that I keep telling people is you have to establish these solid boundaries all the time, and you have to hold them true. You cannot waver, and you need to be consistent, because the only way to stop the madness is to be strong in yourself. Don't engage. You have to disengage these people. Have zero or limited contact with them. You have to remember that people aren't going to like you, and you don't have to care. You don't need to react to people smearing your name or smear campaigns from the flying monkeys, because your actions are going to speak louder than your words. Their spiteful behavior is intended to goad you into engaging. And if you defend yourself, you give them more power, and it just keeps the cycle going. You don't need to defend yourself against these losers. You do not need to engage. You do not need to say a word about anything. I see this all over as, oh, so-and-so's faking their shit or so-and-so's doing that. Okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you believe that. But you don't need to defend that because your content, your word, your actions will speak louder. You have to remember that things are not your problem. They'll try to make you involved in things that have nothing to do with you. They'll involve themselves in things that have nothing to do with them. And if people are running around talking shit and bring that stuff to you, the best response is, that's not my problem. That's not my problem. You have to detach yourself emotionally from all of the garbage that is not your responsibility. If it's not something that you can control, it's not something that you have any part of, it's not your problem. I mean, you have to remember, you don't owe people anything. Good people do good things for people and not expect anything in return. Just like you can do nice things for people and you don't expect anything in return. I think if you just learn to say no, you greet all of that garbage with silence, then practicing that will make progress. Those people will eventually not be able to feed off of the negative bullshit they've created, and eventually they disappear. And I don't do names. I don't tell situations or stories about my own experience in this to protect the guilty, I guess I could call them. But it works. If you stop engaging, you gray rock these people, you do not give them the attention that they seek, the trash takes itself out. You tell the toxic people to get lost. You tell them, I'm busy and I don't have time for this shit. You're going to get this how dare you kind of attitude from them, but silence forces them to take a look at their own shit. You don't need to validate them or their decisions or remind them that that they aren't right. You don't have to correct them, disagree with them. Hold the boundary that you don't tolerate drama and bullshit, and make sure that they come at you as an adult, not with a tantrum, not with an accusatory bullshit. You have to ask yourself, how does their behavior have anything to do with you? And if it doesn't, let it go. One of the things that I tell people who are constantly complaining to me about their victimization is, if you don't care, because they always go, I don't care. Well, why are we having this conversation then? Obviously, if you keep bringing it up, you care. People who keep bringing things up, that's another red flag of things to be aware of. I tell people that I can't, I won't, and I don't fix other people or their problems. If you want to ask an opinion, I'm going to give it to you, but if you don't like the opinion and you turn around and try to gaslight and abuse me because I'm telling you something you don't want to hear, there's the door. You need to treat other people the way that they deserve. And if they're acting immature, treat them like a child. If they're acting like an adult and they're showing you respect, then you can give that respect back to them. But respect is earned, it's not given. And anybody who runs around demanding respect, commanding it from other people, that's a huge red flag. I don't expect anybody to respect me or treat me with respect unless I treat them that way first. And a lot of people don't have that. You have to hold the line firm on your boundaries and be consistent with them. Because if you're not, people will take advantage of that. If you waver one time, if you tell somebody, oh, okay, well, I'm going to forgive you, and they turn around and pull the same bullshit again, and you keep giving in, and you keep making contact, and you don't stand firm, then you're basically invalidating yourself to them, and you become the punching bag, and it's your own fault. I tell people, if I give you that chance and that opportunity, then your actions need to change. You need to basically back up your words with action. And if you can't, I don't give a lot of chances, because you cannot disrespect my boundaries multiple times and get away with it. And then it becomes a me problem, I need to be strong in my convictions to tell people to take a fucking hike and then cut it off. Don't go trolling their shit to make sure they're talking about you. Don't worry about what they're doing. Stay in your lane, do your thing, fix yourself. And I've preached that to the choir all along. If we believe that narcissists are bred and not born, and that it is just trauma not just, but it's a lifetime of trauma responses and unhealthy coping mechanisms that create people who damage and hurt other people, then we have to be firm in the belief that they can change. They can go seek assistance through therapy, through coaching, through whatever, to fix the behaviors, take a really hard look at the traumas that are holding them back and creating these behaviors, and believe that they can change, that they can grow and they can evolve and be a better version of themselves at some point. But people who refuse accountability, who say, I'm not the problem, and keep pointing fingers at everyone else and making them the problem, red flag right there. We're all human. We all make mistakes, yes. But what we do after those things and how we treat other people based on that is the one thing that speaks volumes about our own character, and about our own growth and healing. Be very, very careful about who you trust in social media, on virtual land, toxic cesspool world, because these people, there's so many people who have come here to create dissension, who have come here for a false sense of validation, and who will prey on that. And people are damaged and broken. If the red flags are thrown and you feel uncomfortable and people cannot communicate with you transparently, and keep pressing on those boundaries, then don't invest so much time and energy in them. Just walk away. Don't make eye contact. Do not engage, because you can't win. You cannot argue. You cannot get stuck in that cycle of, thinking, where they turn everything around and make it crazy. And then you start to wonder if you're the problem. You know what's good for you. You also know what's bad for you. Trust your gut. Trust your instinct. If something smells fishy and the behaviors are weird or they're consistently negative and that's not what your goal is, walk away from it. Some people need to shut off the internet, take a walk, find something good and positive in their first world that doesn't involve drama, and then maybe their life will improve. But if you keep running away from your problems and keep on punching down and making your issues other people's problems, you're never going to get anywhere. You're going to self-destruct, and you're going to continue the cycle of self-destruction. And I don't want to start my new year that way. And therefore, I've let the trash take itself out on multiple occasions with multiple people over time, by letting them know that this is not the way that I tolerate being treated. And they can, I know people get mad and angry and they go, well, this person seems to think that this, and they're still talking trash and they're still bringing stuff up, and it makes me mad. Stop looking. Stop watching. Stop paying attention. Let them go do their own thing, because history repeats itself. They will implode. They will self-sabotage. They will basically create bullshit, because that's what they do. And you don't have to be a part of that. You don't have to sit in it. You don't have to give any attention to it. And you don't have to allow it to drag you down. Keep your eye focused on your own goals, your own priorities, your own growth and healing. Surround yourself with people who don't scorekeep, who make you feel good about yourself, and who encourage you authentically and not fake, to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And if these people make you feel good about yourself, then you're probably on the right path. But hold your boundaries clear. Have really clear expectations about what you do and do not tolerate. You might mess up sometimes, but own that. Ask people to communicate transparently with you about how you can not do that again. And ask people how you can help. It's not that hard to fix your drama, to stop proliferating in it, and to start doing a deep dive on the things that hold you back in your first world, in your own heart, in your own personal journey, and fix the traumas that cause the bullshit that you continue to do. And great. If you can, good on you. If you can't, well, there's the door. We can create our own pockets of positivity, of community, The internet is a large place. And on social media, you can find pockets of people who are out and have the same goals, who are not trying to get into your personal business and cause shit, and who just want to, do what they do that's fun and interesting and create things that make people feel good, not create things where people feel like anxious and have anxiety because of what is going on in those places and those spaces. And you shouldn't have to feel like you're walking on eggshells on the internet and on social media, afraid to go visit channels, afraid to talk to people because of all of the narcissism, all the sociopathy that goes on there. And you shouldn't have to be afraid to go on the internet and make friends. But if you establish clear expectations from the beginning, clear boundaries about what you will and will not accept, and take control of your own role, and not allow other people to walk on them, that's a really good step in the right direction. And when you recognize it right from the beginning, call that shit out. I'm not saying to do it in public, but tell them that's not acceptable. I'm not tolerating that. And then be consistent with that. Again, it's much like raising a toddler or a child. When these people come at you with their bullshit and they act like, put them in a timeout, give them a juice box and a cookie, and send them on their fucking merry way. And if they are still going to continue to act like children, then you don't need to entertain it anymore. If they're not in your first world paying your bills, if they're not part of your first world, and they aren't valuable, and they don't have anything valuable to offer to your growth and healing, then they probably should not be there. But I'm sorry this was so long. It takes some time sometimes to unravel my thoughts. I know that people are struggling with toxicity on the internet. I know that there are people out there who just want to do their thing. And I know there are people who keep on seeking validation outside themselves and cause drama where there doesn't need to be any. All you can really do for those people sometimes is pray for them, and then let them go and hope that they're successful in what they do. You don't need to be an asshole about it. You don't need to be rude and call them out and do hate streams. Establish solid boundaries within yourself. Create a positive environment around you. And if you can't, maybe it's time to walk away from the internet. If you're proliferating in the drama and you're having problems and toxicity because you cannot fix your first world, then it's time to reassess what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then make some changes. I'm not going into the new year with toxic people around me. And I call it like I see it. I've got good plans to be with people who are about educating people on being better versions of themselves, how to not be scapegoats and punching bags and doormats for people, and stand up for themselves in a positive way that enriches their experience in life. And if you want to be along on that journey, then I welcome you. Otherwise, if you want to push at my boundaries, you know where the door is. But I hope this helped a little bit. Again, a little long-winded for my first podcast of the year. It is something that, again, I've looked back on all of the other content I've put out there in the last year, and it's all still relevant. I'm still seeing the behaviors. Thankfully, those people aren't part of my world. They keep trying to stick their nose in where it doesn't belong, and I just don't pay attention. I don't address it, because you're always going to be the bad guy in somebody's story, right? And that's okay. It's not a me problem. And if people are trying to point fingers at you and make you the bad guy to avoid their own responsibility and accountability, that's a them problem. So until next time, you guys, stay strong, stay vigilant, hold your boundaries, be a good human, wash your fucking hands, and I'll talk to you next time.